Marcus Dyer had worked security long enough to know the rhythm of a quiet night. 6 years of pacing corridors, logging empty reports, and watching flickering cameras had hardened him into the dependable one. The guard supervisors called when they needed a shift covered. At 32, with more credentials than half the rookies combined, Marcus usually picked the cushy hours, mornings, evenings, weekends off. But when Shield Point Security landed the new government contract, all that changed. The building didn't belong out here. 6 stories of gray concrete sat in the middle of endless pine forest, fenced off with 10-foot steel and barbed wire. A single side road wound 3 miles from the highway to the parking lot, which was empty save for Marcus's pickup. The woods pressed close on all sides, swallowing light. No houses, no neighbors, just the compound and silence. Normally, Marcus avoided overnights, but when the weekend graveyard shifts began bleeding guards, men quitting mid-shift claiming bad vibes, his supervisor leaned on him. He needed the money for a new apartment. Against his better judgment, he said yes. The first 2 weekends were uneventful. The third nearly ended his life. That Saturday, a storm rattled the building with sheets of rain and thunder that made the windows shake. Marcus sat in the control room on the top floor. 3 walls of glowing monitors displayed live CCTV feeds. Inside was dim, the only light the monitors and the faint reflection of his own tired face. At 2 a.m., stretching his legs, he wandered to the window overlooking the back lot. Lightning split the sky, white for a second, and Marcus froze. A tall figure darted between 2 trees beyond the fence. Too big to be a deer. Too fast to be his imagination. He stayed at the window, waiting for another flash. When it came, the trees stood bare, nothing between them. He exhaled hard. "Just tired," he muttered. By the time he'd cracked open an energy drink and returned to his desk, one of the monitors had gone black. The rear lot camera, the one just below his window, was offline. He lifted the blinds. The camera swayed violently in the wind, wires dangling from the pole. Torn free, wind didn't tear out security cameras. Then the keypad alert chimed. Access granted. "Rear door," Marcus's stomach knotted. He grabbed the desk phone, dead. His cell had no bars. The power cut out. The building went black, save for the pulse of stormlight outside. Marcus unholstered his sidearm and slipped into the stairwell, planning to descend to the lobby and bolt for his truck. He was halfway down when the metallic groan of a door echoed from below. Heavy footsteps began climbing toward him. Marcus froze. Training kicked in. Move quiet, stay above. He reversed direction, climbing fast, heart hammering. At the 6th floor, he remembered the roof hatch. If he could hide just beneath it, the intruder might pass. He reached for the ladder, and his pistol clanged against the steel railing. The sound rang like a gunshot. The footsteps stopped, then thundered upward. Marcus bolted, slamming the 6th floor door wide and letting it echo shut, hoping to draw the man into the hall. He sprinted for the ladder, climbed just enough to crouch in the dark. Seconds later, the door burst open. A man dressed in black, mask pulled tight, rushed down the hallway, not glancing up. Marcus dropped from the ladder, boots jarring on the concrete, and ran. The intruder spun, sprinting after him. The chase pounded through the stairwell, Marcus 1 flight ahead, lungs burning. At the lobby level, a crash and cry of pain echoed behind him. Metal, bone, something breaking. He didn't stop. Rain blasted him as he exploded through the front door. He fumbled with his keys, started his truck, and saw movement in the storm. The masked man charged from the building, soaked closing distance. Marcus floored the accelerator, tires screeching, as he tore onto the side road. Not until the highway did his phone regain signal. With shaking hands, he dialed 911. Police found no one inside. But on the stairwell landing where the intruder had fallen, they recovered a fully loaded, unregistered semi-automatic pistol. Marcus never volunteered for weekend overnights again. After the government job, Marcus thought he'd play it safe. He took a steady overnight position at a corporate office in Newark. The pay was lower, but the risk? Supposedly none. At midnight, the lobby was his kingdom. The soda machine hummed in the corner. Security monitors glowed. Cameras showed empty halls, elevators, and the underground garage until they didn't. He spotted the figure weaving between parked cars. A long, oversized coat. Moving slow, deliberate, like he was inspecting. At this hour, the garage should be dead. Cleaning crew was gone. IT guys long clocked out. Marcus called his supervisor. "Someone's in the garage. Stay on the cameras." "Don't engage." Marcus didn't like it. He grabbed his flashlight and rode the elevator down. The garage was cavernous, his boots echoing off concrete. He swept the beam between vehicles, across pillars, through shadows. Nothing. "Security!" he called. Only his own echo answered. Back upstairs, unsettled, he checked the monitor again. The man stood in the exact same place he'd first seen him. Coat dripping. Unmoved, Marcus's skin prickled cold. The figure drifted toward the stairwell camera, then vanished before reaching the door. No other feeds caught him. Then the elevator dinged behind Marcus. The doors slid open. Empty, but wet footprints, bare feet, trailed across the polished lobby floor. His throat tightened. He called backup and forced himself to patrol, flashlight trembling in his hand. 5th floor, empty halls, a door ajar that should have been locked. Inside, an unused office, chair pushed in, nothing more. He stepped back into the hall. Footsteps. Not his. Wet, uneven, fast. Marcus spun, light catching a shadow at the far end. A coat. Moving toward him, panic surged. He ran, slamming through the stairwell door, bolting down steps. Behind him, the footsteps echoed, closer, heavier, until they stopped abruptly above. Silence pressed in, suffocating. When the off-site patrol arrived, Marcus was pale, shaking, flashlight clenched like a weapon. Together, they searched every office, every corner. Empty. No man. No footprints. Back in the control room, Marcus checked the footage. The feeds from the garage, where the man had appeared, were corrupted. A gap in time. Erased. He quit the job within a month. The mobile patrol gig was supposed to be Marcus's reset, drive, check doors, log reports, no haunted stairwells, no lone office towers. His first night out, 1:15 a.m., his supervisor brought him to a medical clinic in Mississauga. A quiet sight until it wasn't. The underground garage gate was wide open. The front door frame splintered inward. "The alarm system? Silent? What the hell?" the supervisor muttered. "This should have triggered hours ago." Inside, the elevator whirred. G1, 2, 3, then stopped at 4. The young supervisor pulled his baton, masking nerves. "Stay with me." The 4th floor was dark, every shadow a threat. Room by room, they cleared. Empty. Then, footsteps in the stairwell. Descending, they froze. The sound cut off. The supervisor called dispatch. "We need backup." "Someone's here." "Possibly armed?" "Hold position," dispatch ordered. Marcus could see his trainer's hands shaking. "Bro," he whispered, voice steady though his chest thundered. "We'll be fine." "Backup's close." Minutes crawled. Finally, the senior supervisor arrived, calm and commanding. Together, they swept the building top to bottom. Nothing, until the front door creaked open. Footsteps pounded outside. By the time they reached the ground floor, whoever it was had vanished into the night. Marcus stood in the empty lobby, heart still racing. Next weekend, he'd be scheduled to return to that same site. Alone. And the thought of stepping into that building by himself chilled him deeper than any storm. The nights were always the same. That's what Ethan Cole told himself as he sat behind the security desk in the empty lobby of the Colburn Financial Building. At 28, Ethan had already worked a handful of dull jobs, retail, delivery, temp shifts in warehouses. Security wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and in the quiet hours of the night shift, he often convinced himself it was easy. Check the monitors. Log a patrol round or two. Drink enough coffee to make it to dawn. The lobby itself was too clean, almost sterile. Shining marble floor, glass-paneled walls that reflected the monitors behind him. The hum of the soda machine was the loudest sound in the place. The last employees had left just after 11, leaving Ethan with the echo of his own footsteps and the flickering feeds of the CCTV system. Tonight felt no different until it did. He leaned back in his chair, scanning the bank of screens the way he always did. Elevators, hallways, the underground garage. That was when something caught his eye. On the garage feed, a figure moved between the parked cars. Ethan straightened in his chair. The garage should have been empty. Cleaning crews had gone home hours ago, and no one had 24-hour access this week. At first, he thought maybe the camera glitched, but then the figure stepped into clearer view. Tall, wrapped in a long dark coat that hung awkwardly, almost oversized. The man wasn't heading toward a vehicle or the exit. He drifted down the rows like he was looking for something. Or worse, making sure no one was watching. Ethan's pulse quickened. He grabbed the desk phone and called his supervisor. "Hey, I've got someone in the garage. Tall guy, long coat. Looks out of place." On the other end, the supervisor's voice was calm, a little too calm. "Stay at your post, Ethan. Keep an eye on the cameras. We'll log it, but don't go down there unless you have to." Ethan hung up, but his gut twisted. Something about the way the man moved didn't sit right. He wasn't pacing nervously or drunk and staggering. He was deliberate, methodical, like he belonged there but didn't want to be seen. He hesitated only a minute before grabbing his flashlight and key ring. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have, every floor passing with a hollow thud in the shaft. The doors opened to silence. The garage stretched out in all directions, concrete pillars and shadows swallowing the light. Ethan clicked on his flashlight, its beam cutting through the dim. "Security!" His voice echoed back at him, too loud in the cavernous space. Nothing answered. He walked between rows, shining light beneath cars, around corners, into every stretch of dark. The air was cool and still, carrying only the faint drip of water from a pipe overhead. Nothing. No footsteps. No figure. Just his own breathing. By the time he reached the far wall, his pulse was racing. He swung the flashlight one last time across the rows of cars, but there was no sign of anyone. Maybe his supervisor was right. Maybe it had been a trick of the light, the camera glitching just when his eyes were tired. But as Ethan stepped back into the elevator, the silence pressed in heavy. He couldn't shake the thought that someone had been watching him from just beyond the beam of his light, waiting. The doors slid closed. Upstairs, the monitors would be waiting for him. And Ethan had the unsettling feeling that when he sat back down, the man in the coat might still be there, exactly where he had been before. The lobby felt colder when Ethan returned. He shook off the dampness of the garage, set his flashlight on the desk, and forced a laugh at himself. "Paranoid," he muttered. The garage was empty. He'd checked every row. Then he turned to the monitors. The man was still there. Same oversized coat, standing motionless in the exact spot Ethan had first seen him. Not pacing now. Not moving at all. Just waiting. Ethan's stomach dropped. I was just there. He had walked those rows with his flashlight, every corner, every shadow. There had been no one. He leaned closer to the screen, his pulse hammering. The figure shifted slightly, coat swaying, as if to prove he wasn't an afterimage burned into the feed. Slowly, the man began walking toward the stairwell camera. Ethan clicked to switch views, heart in his throat. The feed showed the man moving closer, closer, then nothing. He vanished before reaching the door. No one entered. No one left. Ethan flipped through the other cameras. Elevators, empty. Hallways, empty. Rooftop access, clear. The man was gone. A soft ding behind him made him spin in his chair. The elevator doors slid open. Empty. Ethan stepped around the desk, every hair on his neck prickling. The polished marble floor reflected his flashlight beam as he swept it toward the elevator. His breath caught in his throat. Footprints. Dark, wet, bare footprints. They led from the elevator out across the lobby tiles, faint streaks of water marking the man's steps. Bare feet in December. Ethan backed up until his shoulders hit the desk. His hands shook as he grabbed the radio, calling the supervisor again. "There's someone inside." "I've got wet footprints in the lobby." Stay calm," the supervisor cut in. "Stay at your post. Do not approach. Backup is on its way." Ethan swallowed hard. His instinct screamed to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He forced himself to breathe, eyes glued to the footprints. They stopped halfway across the lobby as if the man had paused, or was still standing there, invisible, just out of sight. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, Ethan forced himself to patrol. He had to know. He had to prove he wasn't losing it. He rode the elevator to the 5th floor, flashlight trembling in his hand. The hallway stretched long and quiet, office doors lined neatly on either side. Every sound seemed amplified, the whir of the HVAC, the faint crackle of the bulb overhead. Halfway down the hall, Ethan froze. One door was slightly ajar. Impossible. They were all locked at night. He edged forward, nudged the door open with his flashlight. Inside, the office was empty. Desk, chair, computer monitor asleep, nothing more. Relief slipped in, shaky but real. Just as he turned back into the hall, he heard it. Footsteps. Not his own. Heavy, wet, uneven, slapping faintly against the tile. They were behind him. Ethan whipped around, flashlight beams slicing down the corridor. At the far end, just for a heartbeat, he saw the dark outline of a coat, swaying as the man stepped toward him. His breath caught. The figure didn't run. He didn't charge. He simply walked forward, purposeful, like he already knew where Ethan would go. Ethan bolted, flashlight beam jerking wildly, pounding toward the stairwell at the end of the hall. The footsteps followed, echoing closer and closer, until Ethan threw himself through the door and slammed it shut behind him. The stairwell swallowed him in silence. The footsteps stopped. Only his ragged breathing filled the air. The stairwell door rattled once behind him, then fell still. Ethan pressed his back to the cold cinder-block wall, heart hammering, breath ragged in the pitch dark. He held the flashlight tight but didn't dare flick it on. If the man was on the other side of the door, light would give him away. Seconds stretched. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the faint hum of pipes in the walls. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, each one amplified by the hollow echo of the stairwell. They weren't climbing anymore. They were waiting. Ethan's chest tightened. His training manuals never covered this. Observe, report, don't engage, the handbook said. But none of that mattered when the threat was inside, hunting you. He edged down a few steps, forcing his breathing to quiet. His hands trembled so badly the flashlight rattled against his belt. He tried to count the seconds between the footsteps above, but then they stopped completely. Silence again. That was worse. He froze, listening so hard his ears ached. His pulse throbbed in his temples. Were those faint breaths above him, or his imagination? The radio crackled suddenly on his hip, making him jolt. "Back up en route," the supervisor's voice said flatly. "Hold your position." Ethan clenched his teeth to keep from shouting. "Hold my position? He's in here with me." The footsteps started again, this time descending. Heavy, wet slaps on the steps. Faster now. Panic exploded in Ethan's chest. He bolted down the stairwell, boots pounding, every echo magnified as if the whole building could hear the chase. The man's steps followed, always just behind, always matching his pace. Ethan hit the second-floor landing and threw himself through the door, sprinting down the hallway. His flashlight beam jerked wildly, catching office plaques, locked doors, the shimmer of exit signs. Behind him, the stairwell door banged open and the sound of pursuit grew louder. He tore into another stairwell and bounded down toward the lobby, lungs burning, legs on fire. The footsteps never faltered. By the time he burst into the marble lobby, his hands were slick with sweat, his throat raw from sucking air. He spun, expecting the man to burst through after him, but nothing. Silence. The stairwell door remained closed. No coat, no footsteps, just his reflection in the black glass walls, wide-eyed and pale. Moments later, the front doors swung open and 2 patrol guards strode in, radios crackling. Ethan nearly collapsed with relief. They swept the building together, floor by floor, office by office. Every closet, every restroom, the garage, all empty. Not a single wet footprint remained on the lobby floor. But when they checked the monitors in the control room, Ethan's blood ran colder. The recordings for the past hour were gone, corrupted. A blank stretch of static exactly during the time the man had appeared. The backup guards exchanged skeptical glances. "Glitch in the system," one muttered. But Ethan knew better. He'd seen the coat, heard the footsteps. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a ghost. It was a man. A man who had somehow slipped inside, followed him through blind spots, and vanished without a trace. Ethan quit the job within weeks. But the memory clung to him like a shadow. Even years later, in every parking garage and every office hallway at night, he still caught himself glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see the swaying outline of that dark coat at the far end of the hall. And in his head, he always heard the same thing, the slow, wet rhythm of bare feet following just out of sight. Jordan Reyes had always imagined his first night as a mobile security guard would be uneventful. Drive the company SUV, check a few buildings, sign off some reports. That was the dream. Easy money. Instead, at 1:15 a.m., he found himself staring at the yawning mouth of an underground parking garage in Mississauga. The gate was wide open. "This isn't right," muttered Calvin Hunt, his trainer for the night. Calvin was only a couple of years older than Jordan, but he already carried himself like he'd seen it all. Normally, he cracked jokes to keep trainees relaxed, but now his eyes were sharp, focused on the shadows below. The two stepped out of the vehicle. The winter air bit Jordan's skin, making him instantly aware of how exposed he was. The front door of the building was worse. Splintered inward, the metal frame twisted. "Doors busted," Calvin said grimly. Alarm should have triggered, but there was no alarm. No siren. Only silence. Inside, the lobby was dark and empty. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, half of them flickering. As they advanced, a sound rose in the quiet. The low, mechanical hum of the elevator. Jordan glanced at the display above the doors. The numbers glowed as the car rose. G1, 2, 3, and finally, 4, the top floor. Neither of them had touched the panel. Calvin's knuckles tightened around his baton. "Stick with me, rookie. If someone's up there, we're finding out." Jordan's heart hammered, but he forced himself into the elevator beside his trainer. The doors slid shut with a heavy clank, and the car began its climb. Jordan's reflection in the brushed steel walls looked pale. His eyes too wide. All he could think about was what waited when those doors opened. Chapter 2. The Footsteps Below. The elevator dinged, and the doors creaked open onto the 4th floor. Darkness. Calvin swept his flashlight down the hall, and Jordan followed close behind. Their beams cut across empty offices, shut doors, and half-drawn blinds. Every sound, the squeak of their boots, the rattle of the heating ducts, felt amplified in the stillness. "Clear the rooms," Calvin whispered. "Stay close." They moved cautiously, one door at a time. The offices were barren, desks, chairs, computers asleep. Nothing else, yet Jordan's skin crawled with the sense that someone had just stepped out, leaving the rooms waiting for them. Then came the sound, footsteps, heavy, deliberate, echoing faintly from the stairwell at the far end of the hall. Descending, Calvin froze. The hair stood up on the back of Jordan's neck. The steps went on for a few beats, then stopped. Silence swallowed the floor. Calvin pulled his radio. "Dispatch, this is Hunt. We need immediate backup at the clinic site. Front entrance compromised, possible intruder inside." The response came quick and flat. "Copy that. Backup inbound. Hold your position." Jordan could see Calvin's hands shaking as he clipped the radio back to his vest. The trainer who had joked on the drive over now looked pale and wired. Jordan swallowed hard and whispered, "We'll be fine. Backup's coming. Just breathe." Calvin shot him a look, half relief, half disbelief, that the rookie was steadying him instead. The two waited in silence. Every creak of the building seemed to creep closer, every breath too loud. Jordan gripped his flashlight so hard his knuckles whitened. The stairwell door loomed down the hall, closed but menacing, as if something waited just beyond it. And Jordan couldn't shake the thought that if they moved toward it, whatever was inside would be ready. Chapter 3. Vanished in the dark. After 15 tense minutes, a voice called from below. "Security!" Relief surged through Jordan as the senior supervisor's voice echoed up the stairwell. Moments later, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s appeared, calm and solid in the dim light. "You two all right?" he asked. "Someone's in here," Calvin said quickly. "We heard them in the stairwell." "Then let's find them." Together, the three swept the building floor by floor. They cleared offices, bathrooms, storage closets. They descended to the basement, checked the generator rooms, the garage. Nothing, not even footprints. But as they climbed back to the third floor, the silence broke. The front door creaked open. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the lobby below. They rushed down, but by the time they reached the ground floor, the lobby was empty. The door stood ajar, icy air blowing in. Whoever had been there was gone. Jordan stared at the doorway, chest tight. They had searched every corner. There was no way someone had slipped past without them noticing, unless he'd been there all along, hiding just out of sight. Calvin cursed under his breath. The senior supervisor only shook his head. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the worst thing in this job is what you can't prove." Back outside, the cold air hit Jordan like a wake-up slap. His training night was over, but the real test was still to come. "Next weekend," Calvin said as they packed into the vehicle. "You'll be on this side alone." Jordan stared at the building in the rearview mirror as they pulled away. The fourth floor was a black silhouette against the sky, one window faintly reflecting the headlights before vanishing into the dark. He couldn't shake the feeling that if he stepped back inside, the elevator would already be waiting. Doors open, car sitting at the fourth floor, ready to take him up. And whatever had been hiding in the stairwell would still be there, waiting.